My name is Ricardo Caladeo. I'm from the University of Aveiro in Portugal. And I would like first to thank you for having me here and all the people that make it possible. So this is a project that we've been working in the last half year, 1 year probably. And it's about detecting coral reef fish that are collected using cyanide. So things are changing, and are changing very fast in this industry. And recently, the United States New England Aquarium was able to put up a really nice tool together, where you can actually monitor where the animals are coming that are supplying the US fish trade. So these are some really interesting numbers. And it's not an easy task, because you have a single code that classifies 2,500 species the same. And if it is a challenge to do it in the US, in Europe, it's even harder, because here we only have figures related to the value of those animals. So this is data collected from Eurostat, which just gives you an idea how important this activity is in terms of money. So 135 million euros of imported fish from 2000 to 2011 in the EU. So these are figures that makes you understand that we need to do something if we want to advocate that we are on a path to sustainability. So, and when we look at these figures, no matter how impressive they are, we see that most of the fishing effort is targeting a reduced number of species. For instance, damsel fish. These are the ones that are collected in huge numbers from coral reefs worldwide. So we need to look at these figures. We need to have reliable data to make correct decisions and actually push this industry towards sustainability. This is probably, I wouldn't say the last one, but it's definitely one of the few segments of the pet industry that still heavily relies on the collection of animals from the wild. And this, of course, puts this activity in the spotlight for a bad reason. And we know that either we take strong measures to make this a sustainable activity and practice what we preach, or pretty soon this will change completely, and it will be more and more difficult to source animals from coral reefs. And people have not yet started to talk about the carbon footprint, how sustainable it is to ship fish halfway around the globe to stock them and display them. So this is coming in the near future, and this will be another challenge for the industry to deal with. So on top of this, we have destructive fishing techniques being employed to collect these animals. And this one is certainly one of the most destructive ones, cyanide fishing. This is not a new problem. This is a problem that goes back to the 70s. And this map here is nearly 20 years old. And it's pretty much actual still. Probably we will have a lot more of black skulls in that map if we updated it. It's like someone referred, it's also an elephant in the room. Everybody knows that it's around, but nobody really wants to speak about it. And it's not only related to aquarium fishes, it's also related to live fish that are traded for human consumption. Big snappers, big groupers, Napoleon wrasses. Cyanide fish is everywhere, especially in Southeast Asia. And although it is illegal in most of these countries, it's still in practice. And this picture here was taken by Chris in China, I think. So all those fishes were collected with cyanide, the big fishes that you can see over there. And especially in China, people are not reluctant to talk about it. In Indonesia, probably you have to gain the trust of the fishermen for 1 week, 2 weeks before they admit they use cyanide. In China, they will tell you right away that they're fishing with cyanide. It's not a problem for them. It's business as usual. So this is a very inexpensive toxic that you can use. It's very simple to employ. You just grab a couple of pellets, put it on a squirt bottle, you dive, and you squirt this mix over the reef. And of course, fishes that are lucky enough not to die in the place, they will just get a bit dizzy, stop swimming. You can collect them very easily, especially if you're trying to collect angels or butterflies or those fast swimming fishes. And a part of impacting the fish themselves, it is also heavily destructive for all other invertebrates, namely corals, because it disrupts the symbiosis. And we just did a very simple experiment with coral banded shrimp, which is very abundant in these areas, and levels that are not toxic at all to fish, they are deadly for this shrimp, for instance. So it's actually something that we need to talk about and raise awareness to. Cyanide fishing is still practiced, is still around, and from our experiments, and I will talk about this later on in my presentation, it will only go from bad to worse with global warming, especially in these tropical areas. So the question is, can we screen a fish that was collected with cyanide? And the answer is yes. And these efforts were in place for a long time, while there was money backing up this effort, especially in the Philippines, where a screening program was in place during the 90s and early 2000s. And then when the financing stopped, the program stopped, of course. But the technique they were employing required the sacrifice of small fish, and most of the animals we stock in public aquariums are small. If it's not like a big grouper or a big rat or whatever, it's difficult to collect a sample of blood without killing the fish, you know. So most of the times you had to sacrifice the animal to do the analysis on the blood, on the gills, on the kidney, on the muscle of the animal. So at the University of Aveiro we come up with a more friendly way, especially for the fish, to look at this issue. And this is a metabolic pathway. This is fairly well known for vertebrates. And basically, if a vertebrate is exposed to a sublethal dose of cyanide, it will start detoxifying itself and create a less toxic metabolite called thiocyanide that is later excreted through the urine. And this is what we were aiming at, looking at the urine of the fish. The debate that was going on was people claiming that knowledge available from freshwater fish would say this is a very fast turnover process and we would not be able to have a decent time frame to screen the fish. And people said, no, these are saltwater fish, the metabolism is different, they don't urinate as they want like freshwater fish, they need to control the water they put out. So probably we'll have a time frame that is long enough to look at that. And this was what we do, and this was studied during the master thesis of a student, Marcelo Vaz, at our university, and we realized that we can actually monitor the excretion of this compound for at least 4 weeks. So this apparently was a reliable tool to work on. So how do we do it? Basically, we get newly imported fish, we stock them in synthetic seawater that we have prepared beforehand, and we know it's clean and doesn't have thiocyanide, the metabolite we are looking for. We stock them during 24 hours, and then we monitor the water. We just take a sample of the water, and that's it. If it has thiocyanide inside, it must have come from the fish. The fish was actively excreting that compound. And that's a non-invasive and non-destructive approach for you to screen if the fish was poisoned with cyanide or not. So we were using a very time-consuming technique, which gave us a really hard time to put together. But we managed to do it by using an HPLC with some modifications. And we just collect the sample of water. It just needs to be refrigerated, so it's not difficult to ship it around. And then we just injected a small amount into the HPLC. And we look at what came out. It's not very fancy. It's just a chromatogram. And whenever we got a positive, we had to be 100% sure that it was not a false positive, because we know that this can easily backfire on the companies and the industry that are trying to promote this effort to fight cyanide. So we were very conservative on our approach, and we only considered the fish to be testing positive if the amount we were detecting was twice that of the detection limit we were using. So we were very conservative in our approach, and all data were confidential. Nothing was released prior to having the green light from Sea Life. And when we work in the future with companies, this will be our policy. So people know beforehand what were our results. They will try to solve the problem, because we know that this can easily backfire in the industry, especially, no matter how good are your intentions. So whenever we had a positive, the first thing we did is that we went and tested the water that we had prepared to stock the fish, just to double check that the water was not contaminated for some reason. So if the water was clean, what we did is that we spiked our sample. We injected our sample with a known amount of the compound, and we see if at the end we had that known amount plus the level that we detected beforehand. So we like double checked the sample. And if everything was okay, then we would claim that we had a positive in our samples. So we received 75 samples, not 75 samples, it's actually 75 times 3 samples from sea life, from I think Weymouth, that supplied the animals. And we screened that water to see if we had any traces of thiocyanide. We tried to cover the maximum number of species and families that we could, because we know from previous experience that results may change and may even be species-specific. So we really need to be careful when we try to generalize the method, and we are working with so many different organisms, like marine ornamental fish. So these are the number of fishes that we screened, and these were our results. So the ones in red were the ones that tested positive. Again, this is a very conservative approach. In case of being too close of the detection limit or below twice the detection limit, we consider the fish to be clean. So roughly it's about 15% of our fish turn out to be contaminated. I must confess that this was not surprising at all. These are fishes coming from the Indo-Pacific. Traceability is an issue in this industry. It's very hard for you to pinpoint the exact location of an animal, and this is something that everybody acknowledges, but there is not much into place to go against this, and we definitely need to know, if you want to have sustainably collected animals, where do they come from? You must have a reliable way to trace back the origin of your animals. So these were originating from the Indo-Pacific, most probably from Indonesia and the Philippines, which are the most important suppliers of marine ornamental fish. So we had some usual suspects, especially the angelfish, butterflies, surgeonfishes as well. And we have 2 other families that were never ever before traced, where cyanide had never been detected before. And when we look at our figure, that's the blue line, and we compare it to historical figures, we see that it's pretty much there. Not small degrees, but nothing special. And what really puzzles me is that more than 20 years after people raised the flag and there was a strong effort, nothing has really been done to actually change the figures concerning cyanide fishing. So the next steps, well, we got some support from the Sea Life Trust to help covering the expenses, and still the university is strongly committed to this program, and this is the vice rector for research, probably our future rector. This is to show you how committed we are with this program. And we are now buying a new machine, which represents an investment of about 40,000 euros to increase our screening ability and speed up things. Because we know that we need to be able to process samples a lot faster than we do, and to have a less labor-intensive method to screen for that compounds. We have several students lining up to work with us in our project, because I think this is, you don't have to work too hard to convince people that this is something nice to work on. But we want to put the new method up and running by the beginning of 2016 and increase dramatically the number of samples we have screened. And very important, we want to join forces with academia, Sea Life of course, and the industry. For us it's paramount that we all work together and pull in the same direction. Otherwise it will be very difficult to make this happen in the near future. We must be very aware on how this may, again, turn back on the people trying to promote this. We actually wrote an opinion paper about how difficult this can be to develop in the US, because they have a law called the Lacey Act, which actually allows you to sue someone that imports an illegal animal. So if you import a fish illegally collected with cyanide and you say, look, someone sold me an illegal fish, you can actually get prosecuted because you bought that fish. So it's like a vicious cycle that you don't really know how to get out of it. So this will not be difficult, this will not be easy to implement, but we need to know how to move forward and give some really firm steps in that direction, and we hope that during these next days we can sit down and discuss where do we want to go from here. So these are just some of the people involved. So Joanna did her master thesis on this topic, and she realized that dosages of cyanide which are not toxic today will be deadly in 2050, 2100 if temperature continues to go up in coral reefs. We use Viperinus salaris Nemo as the model species, and this was the most resilient of all damselfishes that we could find. So if it becomes deadly for this species, it will be even deadlier to all the other damsels and probably all the other animals in the reef. We also have Marcella, which is finishing her PhD on this topic, and we hope that soon many more of you join us. And with Finding Dory coming out, I'm sure that hundreds, maybe thousands of these animals will start to be targeted by cyanide to supply our trade and our public aquariums. So it's really up to us to make sure that no dories are poisoned by cyanide. And although no official figures are available, what people say is that for every fish collected with cyanide that makes it to our stores, 9 died during the process. So these figures of 8 million fish, 10 million fish, 20 million fish, many millions of fishes must be multiplied by 8, 9 or 10 for you to get a look at the real picture. And just to close it up, it's not because a fish is free of cyanide that it has been sustainably collected. So this is just a part of a much bigger problem.